Everything for me becomes allegory. Charles Baudelaire. This is AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Szymanski. When George Orwell published 1984, it ended up getting widely banned in the United States for being apparently anti-capitalist. Meanwhile, in the USSR, it was widely banned for being anti-communist. So, which is it? My point is, one, books are very much up to interpretation, like you can see, but two, political books of political commentary get pretty spicy. And we're doing something dangerous today, and we're getting political. And I'm doing that with regular contributor Danielle McLaughlin. How's it going?
It's going very well, and I'd like to comment that we are right now in the middle of Freedom to Read Week, in which we are all exhorted to go and read banned books. So I think that it's perfectly appropriate that since Animal Farm was banned by nearly everybody, that we're reading it out today.
Why was Animal Farm banned? That's also one of George Orwell's short stories. 1984 and Animal Farm are kind of put into the same basket because they have very similar messages and styles, I would say. Why was Animal Farm so widely banned?
Well, first of all, people didn't think that it was good for children. And when it was first published, it was published as Animal Farm, a fairy story. It is absolutely not a fairy story, but no. I think George Orwell thought that might help it to get published. It was turned down again and again and again. People said that it wasn't suitable for children. I've made sure that my children and grandchildren read it because I think it's more than suitable for children, more as a warning than anything else. But I think that people don't like books that make them uncomfortable. And while this book, Animal Farm, which we're speaking about today, was written originally as an anti-Stalinist piece of literature, you can see very clearly that it really is about every kind of authoritarian government, and anybody who is an authoritarian is not going to want people reading a book that shows very clearly how authoritarians come to power. And that's where we are.
Yeah, I recall in the book they refer to the people in power, the people who make the decisions, as the two-leggeds, and those are the humans in the farmhouse, right? And then by the end, the pigs end up walking on two legs.
Oh, yes, exactly. And the sheep, and you can use the term sheep in the ways in which we all use the term sheep, start out by learning the phrase, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good, which they repeat over and over and over again. And then they have to be taken away for a while and retaught. And they are taught that 2 legs good, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. And so, yes. So, it's and in 1984, you can see that there's also, an inversion. So, for example, the 3 main statements or slogans for the party with a capital P are: war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And those are the main messages that the party and Big Brother want to get across to the populace, or the proles, as they're known. And in Animal Farm, it starts out with 7 slogans, which are basically a constitution. One of them being all animals are equal. And at the end, they're only down to one slogan, which is all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
A little paradoxical, right? But that's what Animal Farm is all about, though. Yes. Is ultimately, and this ties back to the quote I read at the top of the show by Charles Baudelaire, is that it's an allegory. Yes. And because it's told as a fairy story, sometimes I wonder, obviously everybody knows the message or what that story was trying to say, but at the time, did it fool anyone? Like, did the allegory fly over people's heads and they thought it was just like a cute barnyard story?
I think that that's true even today for some readers.
How do you miss the message nowadays? Like, Animal Farm is so infamous.
Well, exactly. And if you read it in historical context, then it's clear as day. But if
Yes.
you I mean, for example, it was turned down because some publishers, and I will tell you that I know of a Canadian publisher who says we don't publish animal stories. So, at talking animals, we don't want talking animals. They're that's just inappropriate.
Why?
You well, here's an interesting factoid for you, Jacob. Winnie the Pooh, which I think most of us know about, was banned because the Christian right in the United States said that talking animals contravened God's will, and that they were not religiously appropriate. So there are so many reasons to ban books that it's very hard to wrap your head around it. But could you miss what Animal Farm is really about? Could you miss? In the past hour, I've been listening to people commenting on the Ontario election, and
Hmm.
I am completely bowled over by the mass of people who just don't get it. They just don't know what they're doing. Somebody says, I really am worried about democracy, but I never vote. Oh, okay then. I
Yeah,
mean,
for context, as we're recording this,
mhm.
not even 24 hours ago, the Ontario election happened, and Doug Ford gained a third term as a majority government,
Mhm.
where the turnout was 45%.
I think it was
And you were
even
so
lower than
right.
that.
It was
Yeah.
lower than that? Yeah, it
Yeah.
was somewhere
It
between
was,
44 and 45,
yeah,
right?
historically low. Historically
Which
low.
was hilarious because I saw headlines saying higher than expected turnouts, but also still
Yeah.
unexpectedly low because the last one was the lowest in Ontarian history.
And guess what? You thought you thought it couldn't get worse, but oh my, it does. Um, I think that people, when I was going to school, Animal Farm was required reading, and
Mhm.
we read it in the context of what was then the Soviet Union. And I went to school at least part of the time in the United States, and the warning was about communism and how dangerous communism was, and how communism, will result in everybody dying, basically. Um, if you read it today, uh, you can see Trumpism all over it. It is, it is about an authoritarian government. You can see, in fact, certain of the animals reproduce certain people that we're seeing in power in the United States right now. The piglet called Squeaker, who goes around and touts how wonderful Napoleon is. Um, is Musk. I mean, you've got this little pig-faced animal that is, trying to rally the troops and make sure everybody believes everything. And poor old Boxer, who is the horse who works harder and harder and harder until he dies from overwork, only learns two things, which is, I will work harder. That's his solution to everything. I will work harder until, of course, he can't. And Napoleon is always right, the head pig. Um, and, if you can get the uneducated populace to believe things like this, you will get what you pay for. And guess what? Animals are told, well, we're giving you more food than you've ever had before, even though the animals are wondering, why are they so hungry? Why isn't there enough food to go around? But, our production is enormous. Yeah.
Both Animal Farm and 1984 talk a lot about the importance of controlling the message,
Hmm.
right? Who gets to write the Constitution in
Yeah.
Animal Farm? Who is in control of, what do they call it in 1984? The Ministry of Truth?
Yeah. That's right. And the thought
Even though
police.
it's
Don't
basically
forget the thought.
propaganda and the
That's
thought
right. The
police,
thought
of
police.
course,
Yeah.
right? The question is, how do you get people to forget that the seven elements in the Constitution got reduced to one, and that they do believe that that everyone is equal, except some are more equal than others.
Well,
When people drink the Kool-Aid, that's when you're in danger. We do not want to be drinking the Kool-Aid.
Well, it's funny that you should use that expression, drinking the Kool-Aid, because it comes from a real life instance, which was Jonestown, in
Right.
which the vast majority of people were led to believe that they would end up in a higher place by poisoning themselves and their whole families. And they drank the poisoned Kool-Aid because they had been led by Jones to believe that this was the right thing to do and that this was the logical outcome. So what we understand is that it really isn't all that hard to get the populace to do things that are incredibly against their best interests. People will vote against their best interests, and people will not spend any time in trying to understand things other than what they are told. I'm just going to give you a small example.
Yeah, please.
Someone I know during an election, this was quite a few years ago, she made her living as a cleaning lady. And by the way, she was also taking welfare, which is not lawful. But she decided that she was going to vote for a conservative candidate because that conservative candidate had promised that he would get those welfare cheats. It never for a moment occurred to her that she might be one of them.
No
But
way.
absolutely. And that is because if you say we're going after the other, doesn't matter who in the United States right now it's immigrants. Do you believe that there is no such thing as a bona fide refugee? I sure don't. Do you return people to places where they will be likely killed? We have a principle called non-refoulement, which means we will not return people to their death or to their harm, totally being ignored, a human rights principle. Do we have governments that do not understand that if they do a certain thing, that it will come back and bite them in the back? Because they haven't been able to look 2 steps ahead of them. Is this happening here? Yeah. Is it, if people, I'll just give you another example from Canada. And that is people say we've got to deal with bail. And that the problem with bail is that too many people are let out on bail and then they go on to commit terrible crimes. They don't actually look at who is incarcerated awaiting a trial. The vast majority of people who are incarcerated right now are people who have never been convicted of anything. But because of the backlogs and so many other reasons in our courts, we are holding large numbers of people who are legally innocent, legally they have not been convicted of anything. So people say we've got to get those criminals off the streets. And then as soon as somebody is arrested and held for a very long period of time without trial, we don't say we've got to fix the bail system because it's really unfair. We look at it only in one direction as a populace. So critical thinking, which I think when you teach kids Animal Farm or 1984, if you aren't teaching it along with critical thinking, you've made a grave error. But books like Animal Farm give you the opportunity to get young people to start thinking about what are the messages you're receiving today.
Another example of people not understanding how things work and it being a huge detriment to them is understanding tax brackets.
Exactly.
You ever come across someone who gets presented with the opportunity to get a promotion, more pay, and they go, no, I don't want it because if I go into a higher tax bracket, I'm actually going to make less because I have to pay more taxes. Not how it works, guys.
No.
It's the money that goes above that threshold of the new tax bracket that gets taxed at a higher level. You will still make more money. My point is, we have to be careful when you shame people for being uneducated. Nobody is going to be convinced if you just call people dumb.
No.
Right? And that's why it's important to get these kids to read 1984 and Animal Farm, to question what's being told around you and use critical thinking and learn how to sort the truths from the untruths. And there's a middle ground to this, Danielle. Sometimes you need to be able to admit when you don't know something. And when you don't know something, you need to dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to dig a little deeper, then admit that you don't know it and swallow your pride.
Well, I think that that only works where the information is readily available to you. Because if we find
Mm.
that our governments are going to ban books, or information, or history is going to be taught in order to eliminate unpleasantness,
Or delete websites off
mhm,
the internet, like President Trump is doing right now.
that's right. Or
Hmm.
or decide that only certain media, those favorable to those in power, will be eligible to report, like President Trump and Elon Musk are doing now. We're going to find that you develop a huge lacuna, a huge gap in education and in information, and people will believe what they are told, whether it's true or whether it's false. I mean, just as an example, look at measles. If people have been led to believe that there is a danger in vaccination, we find today that a preventable disease is growing and growing. A disease that was declared to have been eliminated in the 1990s is back and is a terrible problem. And we don't need to do this. But if you tell people, wait a minute, you don't have to understand what happened in the past, you just have to listen to what we tell you today, this is exactly where we go.
Again, you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I think so. Remind me.
It's when you know very little about a topic, you tend to believe you understand a lot more about it than you really do.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
the more you know about something, the more you understand how little you know about it.
Mhm.
It's a paradox where experts in any topic have the perspective to understand what they don't know. And that's what's tricky about it. If you're uneducated, and it's very frustrating. If you're uneducated about a topic, you don't have that perspective of what you don't know, and you really feel like you have things grasped and you really understand things. One thing you'll notice in very intelligent, well-read people is that they will admit when they don't know something.
That is our hope.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
but
true.
I mean, I think that the more you read and the more information you gather, the more you realize how much is out there that you don't know and will never be able to know. And as you say, you need to step back and say, all right, what is it that I don't even know how to ask? There are
Mm.
questions out there that I need to have answered, but I don't know what those are at the moment. And that's where you want to bring in expertise, you want to read widely, broadly.
Okay, so far we've kind of made Animal Farm in 1984 seem as the answer to all of this, and it's obviously not.
Not.
But how does it help? Because it's an allegory
Mhm.
of authoritarianism.
Yes.
How does reading these two books specifically help in understanding the importance of information and education?
That's an excellent question. Again, um, if these books are being taught, they need to be taught in context, and they need to
Hmm.
show people how they relate to their own current living situations. What is it that you are swallowing whole hog without asking? I think that
We have to be honest with ourselves that maybe you and I are
Mhm.
swallowing some things we really ought not to be.
Absolutely.
We have drunk the Kool-Aid and we don't even know.
Yeah. No, I think that that's true. I mean, question everything has been a
Mhm.
principle of democracies. Just somebody tells you that this is the way it is. If you can believe that war is peace, if you can believe that vaccines are dangerous to your health. What else can you believe? Can it be conspiracy theories of all sorts? Can it just be simple misinformation? I was really interested to see that the mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, after the double snowstorm whammy that we received in this city, had been told that all of the sidewalks had been plowed. Now,
What?
yes, and then
They were
she
not, to be clear. They were absolutely not.
absolutely not. And then she went out and that, wait a minute,
Who
I
told her
think,
that?
well, the
Wow.
contractors, of course. So, the
Wow.
city had contracts with private snow clearance companies, and they said, we've done the work. It's done. And then she went to visit somebody in a seniors home and found that the seniors couldn't get out of the building and their visitors couldn't get in because nothing had been plowed. And she said, okay, we have some questions we need to ask, and we need to ask them today. And she is asking those questions. But if you were to simply believe people, um, Napoleon the pig makes sure that all of the animals believe everything that he says all of the time. If they don't, they won't be alive for long. There are absolute parallels, for example, with Putin today. I was struck as I was reading it in the early part of the book, where the female dogs have a bunch of puppies. There are about 20 odd puppies that are all born at around the same time. The pig takes them away, and we don't know for a while what is he doing with all of those puppies. Well, he is educating them to attack all of the animals, to become killer dogs. Well, you know that Putin has been basically kidnapping children from Ukraine, and they are being educated in special education institutions, of course, to revere Putin and to believe everything that is coming out of Russia. So this might be just an animal story, but children being kidnapped and being educated in the beliefs of the powerful is nothing. There's nothing new in that. It's happening every day. And if you look at states in the United States or certain places in Canada where people want to make sure that children don't learn certain things and aren't exposed to certain things and don't know to ask the questions, it's dangerous. It's simply dangerous.
I think that's up to interpretation, Danielle, because you can take that same allegory and turn it into one of the concerns a lot of people on the right have, and that's that when young adults go to university, they get indoctrinated in, woke ideology, and then they catch the woke mind virus, right? It's the same thing where I think that students go to universities, but then they get put all of these ideas in their heads.
But what does woke
I don't
mean?
believe that to be clear. I don't believe that to be clear.
Woke means that you believe in equality, which,
woke is unbelievably vague.
Well, it is.
And the vagueness of the term is kind of what makes it powerful, because
Exactly.
you can turn it to whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that however we educate people, one of the things that people know is that whoever is banning books, they're never the good guys. In the end of the story,
True.
It's not the good guys who ban books. I thought if you'd like, I'd read a quote from
Please.
Stanley Kubrick to help explain why allegories are so attractive. He said, "There's something in the human personality which resents things that are clear, and conversely, something which is attracted to puzzles, enigmas, and allegories."
I don't know. I think we quite like simple answers. Black and whites are easy to understand, right? And then I think that's partly why conspiracies propagate themselves, because they purportedly bring answers to the chaos of the world.
Well, I think they don't tend to be simple. I think they tend to be simplistic. So,
what's the difference? What's the difference between simple and simplistic?
Simplistic means that it basically disregards complexity. And complexity is the human condition. There's very little in the human condition that doesn't involve many different factors. So that if you choose to simply disregard the things that make you uncomfortable or make things look difficult, then you're looking for a simplistic answer. A simple answer is one fact. A simplistic answer is one wrong fact.
Is the simplistic answer to our dilemma with information nowadays to have people read 1984 and An Animal Farm by George Orwell to educate themselves? I'd argue it's absolutely a simplistic argument. It obviously helps. I think those books are very powerful and still extremely relevant. Are they going to convince anyone? I don't think so. I'm being a little nihilistic here, but I have to admit, Danielle, I've been feeling pretty gloomy lately, and I don't know if these books cheer me up. I don't know about
Not
you.
at all. There's nothing in these books will cheer you up. No, I think you need to. Somebody I saw had posted something that says, "Why is it after all of the terrifying and depressing and anxiety provoking news that we like to relax by watching serial killers and murder mysteries, on television?" I think,
Yeah,
they're
those shows are paradoxically relaxing. I can't
Isn't that
explain
right?
it.
Well, I think it's because they give you a simple answer. It's a whodunit. We figure out who
Yes.
did it, and
There's
then we
always an
walk
answer.
away. That's
Someone's
right.
always done it, right?
Right. Exactly.
Danielle, I want to thank you so much for coming on to this totally uncontroversial episode of AMI Audiobook Review. Have a good one. I'm looking forward to next month.
Me too. Thank you so much, Jacob.
Of course. That was regular contributor Danielle McLaughlin. She's a reader for PAL Reading Services. Always love when she comes on. That's all the time for this edition of AMI Audiobook Review. The show airs weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and repeats every 6 hours. But we also make ourselves easy to find. We're on all the big podcasting platforms, and that includes YouTube. You can email us at audiobookraview@ami.ca, and you can also follow our Instagram at AMI Audiobook Review. It's not just for plugging the next episode. We're posting reels about our best moments on the show and exclusive content as well. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jacob Chamansky.